Welcome to another video series with Mr. Long, and we're looking at this grade 11 IT paper or prac exam from November 2023, and it's a good way to practice before your exams. And we're looking at the second question, which is a database question. So do you know your database work? Well, let's go find out. So just remember, if you go to the video description on YouTube, you'll find a link to the data files as well as this question paper so you can practice on your own. I want you to just talk about the database. You need to understand the database before you can write code on that database. So the first thing is we've got a database dealing with performers in a circus, and this is the table structure. So we've got a perform ID, which is a number data, which is, each one's got a unique primary key. We've got the performer's name and surname combined in one. It's not good design, but that's what you have for this case. You will ideally would like that to be two separate ones, but that's fine for now. The act name, that's the performer that they are involved in, and then the category type. The type of performer can either be an acrobat, clown, contortionist, or dancer. So there are only 4 options for category. The year that is joined, and it's just a numerical type, so it's just the year, and how much they get paid per show. So they give me some examples of it. So to avoid me having to come back to this every time, I've got the actual diagram over here. So you can see the ID, you can see the name and surname, act that they're involved in, the category, the year that they joined, and their payment per show. We've got our program over here, and we've got all our different buttons. So let's go look at what they want us to do. They say we may not use filter, locate, sort functions on the ADA component. They must all be the normal.first and the normal inserts and all that. The name of the table to be used is called TBL performers. We need to know what table is being used. Now that's conveniently the same as that, but that's the name in the database. It might be different over here. Sometimes they're called ADO performers. In our case, it's TBL performers, which is great. So let's get into it. Question number 2.1. Complete the code for the BTN Q21 that calculates and displays the total cost for all the shows. The output is displayed as a show message as follows. So we want to display the total amount for all the shows. So that's that per show payment. We want to add all those values up. There's no special criteria, just add up all the shows and we display it like that. So that seems quite simple. So we're going to go through each and every record, and the moment we do that, that means we are going through the following sequencing. We're going to go TBL performers dot first. We're then going to say while not TBL performers dot end of file do, and we're going to have a begin and end, and then inside here we're going to go TBL performers dot next. It's always that sequence. It started the first while we're not at the end. Keep going, and once we've done what we need to do, we go next. Always remember, if you're going through each and every record, you need to have that as your structure. Now we are adding up all of the per show payments, which if we look over here, looks like it's going to be a decimal number. So we need to make a real for the total. So I'm going to make a variable called R total of type real, and we need to initialize it to a 0. And we are going to go through each and every show and say R total is equal to whatever's in R total plus the value in the per show payment field, that per show payment field. So we want to get that value. So how do I get the per show payment field? Well, that's TBL performers table, and in square brackets we're going to write down the per show payment field, and that must be a string value that you put in there. That whole thing isn't a string, that's a real number, but we put a string inside the square brackets. You go fetch that field, whatever the value is in that field, per show payment, which will then go over here and go, hey, get that 1,500, add it onto our total. Then go to the next one, go get the 1,2, add it onto our total. So that's what it's going to be doing each and every time. And then at the end of that loop, once the loop is done, then we need to display it, total cost of shows, using a show message. So there's a show message, total cost of shows. And as you can see, it's displayed as a decimal value. So we need to go plus the R total. So we want it as a currency value. So I'm going to put this over here so we can get some space so you can see it all in one line. So it's float to string F. Spell that correctly. I missed the O there. Float to string O, not a 0. Float to string F, the R total. We want to convert it from FF currency. And let's go 8, 2, because I think it was 2 decimal places. So there we go. So take the total shows, convert that to currency, and then display. Let's have a look. So there we go. We're going to go total shows. We went through all of them and got 34400. Was that the total that they had? 34400. There we go. So it's 100% correct. So there we go. So we're done. Let's move on to question 2.2. Complete the code for button Q22. Prompts the user for the name of an act like the Flying Marvels, and displays the names and surnames of all the performers involved in that act. So if you come over here, so we're going to go through every single record. If we find a match with the act name, we must display that name. So we're going to start at the first one and go all the way to the bottom. So this is also going through all of the records, because we're not just finding one record. You'll see over here we are finding multiple names because there are lots of performers in that act. Let's come over here to that button, Performers Act, and we first of all need to get the input. So we need to get that S input. Now there's no place to get it from if you look at the actual design, so I'm assuming that's going to come from an input box. And if they say here prompts the user, when they say prompt, it normally means input box. Let's go equals to an input box, act name, enter name of act. And what I'd always do, just as a little tip, is I'll put in a value in here by default. So we know we're going to be looking at the Flying Marvels for our test. So I don't have to type it in every single time. If you looked over here, they type the Flying Marvels. I put it in straight away so that when it pops up, it's already there, so I don't have to type it every time. So we're going to go through all of the records. So we're going to say TBL performers dot first. And what you can actually do, if you've done this before, it'll be easy if you just go and copy it all from here. You just take out what's not there. So we're going to go and actually just paste it, and we don't need the total anymore. So now I've got my algorithm already every single time. So you can do that if you want. It's already every single time. So we want to check if we've gone to the first record. We go to the first record, and we're going to look if the act name equals to the name of the input. So we've asked for the Flying Marvels. We want to check if the act name is the same as what we've just input. Now, how do I get the act name from the table? That's TBL performers, square bracket, the name of the field, but remember we must put that in quotes. So go fetch the act name from that first record, check if it matches the input. If it does, then what do we want to do? They said we want to display the name of that person, which is the perform name. Make sure that it's spelled exactly like it is in the database. So if that's true, then we're going to say the rich summary, which you can see there, that's the one we're using. .lines.add, we're going to add the perform name. Now, how do I get the perform name? Well, that's going to be TBL performers, the name of the table, square bracket, and there. Should we spell performers right? And we're going to put that in quotes. Remember, the field name must be in quotes. So go fetch the perform name. Now, is that a string? Yes, it is. So therefore, we can put that into the rich edit. If it was a number field, we would have to convert it. So if we find a match, then go do that. So let's go run it and do it. So we're going to ask for the performers in the act. We were looking for the Flying Marvels. You see, we don't have to type it because we did it already. Click OK, and there it's got the names. Now, if I remember correctly, there is something missing. They put the performers for act. They put a heading, so that's what we should probably do as well. So I'm going to do that as well quickly. So before we do all this check, I'm going to say, okay, well then the rich summary lines.add, we can say performers in act. We should probably put a single quote there, Mr. Long, not a double quote. Single performers in act. And then we're going to put the Flying Marvels, which is going to be what they inputted. So I'll do that. Fetch that input. They want the Flying Marvels performers in act. Let's run it now. Flying Marvels there. Performers in the Flying Marvels. There are the three. And if you look there, it's exactly like it's displayed over there. So there we go. So let's move on to the third question. 2.3. Code has been provided to assign a category, act, name, and payment per show for a new performer to variables. So that's already been done for us. We click on this button, add a performer. See, they've already added the category, the act name, and the payment per show to variables. Complete the code for this button that adds a new record, a brand new record. So we're inserting a new record with those values, as well as we need an ID, which is the next record number in the table. And the performer's name is your own name and surname. So I'm going to have to put Mr. Long in there. And the year joined is the current year. This must be the year for the time that this record was added. It's the current year. It doesn't just mean that because we are in 2023 must do it. It must be whatever the current year is. What I'm going to do here, first of all, is I need to work out the next value for the ID. Now, there are lots of ways of potentially doing that. If we go read about this table, contains one single table that stores details of the different performers involved in shows. The circus, the contains table, okay? So it's all 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers, and if we go, they give us any other information. The next record number in the table. Now, I say record number. There are lots of ways that could potentially do this. So one way to get the ID. So we've got an ID variable there. We've got those. So to get the next ID, what we could do is go to the TBL performers dot record count. I don't know if you know that there's a record count, how many records there are in the database. And if there are 9 and we're going to add a 10th one, we're just going to add 1 to our ID. That's one way of doing it. Another way would be to loop through everything and find the biggest value for the ID. So that's another way that could be done. So you could have an Rmax, find the biggest ID. So we could then say, well, RD is equal to a very small number. Let's say make it 0. And if the, what are we looking for? We're looking for the RD number, the perform RD. If the perform RD is bigger than my RRD, which means we found a new big number, then we're going to replace RRD with this new value. We're trying to find the biggest number. This is your max algorithm. Then your RRD is equal to this value. So we're trying to find the biggest value. And then at the end, we'll just increase our RD, because if the biggest number is 9, we want to make it a 10. So you could have done something like that. If you could use sort, you could have used a sort and then found the last record in that. But you could have used either one of these. I think would have been fine to find the RRD that you want to use. So let's just leave it like that. So we've recorded found which is the biggest RD that's currently in the database number, and then we just increased it by 1 so that we can find the next value. That's assuming that they've deleted some. They've deleted, but if it's all sequential, then you could have just used the record count. That's the one thing. So we've got an RD, which is the next record. The performer's name will be my own name. So they've got a variable here for the name, my actual name. So we've got RRD, and now my name, name is going to equal to, I'm going to make it Mr. Long because it's name and surname. So you're obviously going to use your name and surname. And then the last one is the here joined is the current here. How do we get the current here? So, well, there's an I here, which is a type integer. Now, you can't just go I here equals, well, I here, Mr. Long, I here is equal to 2023, because what happens if we run this code next year? You're probably going to run this in 2024. So how do you know that it's the current year? Well, we're going to have to use today's date. So we're going to use today's date. Now, that's going to return today's date. Now, how do I get the year of that particular date? Well, I'm going to use the year of function, year of the date, and that will get today's date, and then it'll just get the year value of that date, which in this case will be 2023. If we run this next year, it'll be 2024. I think you can also use current year. If you use current year, that also returns the current year. That would actually be a quicker way of doing it. But if you're using date functions, you want to get the current year, there you go. So you get the year of today's date. So if I run this next year, it'll be 2024. That'll go into our year. And now that I've got everything that I need, I can go TBL performers, put it into insert mode, and then I'll start allocating the value. So I'll start off with the perform RD value. That's going to be equal to RRD. And then to save time, I'm just going to copy and paste this a couple of times. And now I can change those values. So what else are we changing? We're going to change form name. Form name is going to be whatever's in S name, because that's what I put Mr. Long. You could have just put Mr. Long as a string there. That would have also worked. Then we want act name. What act name are we going to use? They gave us that one. Act name, if you look over here, oh, there we go. S act name is solo. We're going to put that variable there. As long as they match. ID goes in, that's a number, that's a text, that's a text. The next one is category. Category, and they say, oh, they say Mr. Long's a clown. They're saying we're clowns. Why are they saying we're clowns? So there we go, we're a clown. And then the next category is the year joined, as long as that is a number field, which we have a number field because I year is an integer. I year is going to be that. And then we're going to do one more. I'm going to do one more of these, which is the per show payment. Per show payment, which will be whatever is in that variable, which is a real, which works out perfectly. So that's going to be my per show payment. So there we go. And then everyone forgets, once you've done that, remember, you must go TBL performers .post to post your results. So there we go. Make sure that you do those. So we first worked out an ID, we put in our name, we worked out the current date, and then we put all those values in. So let's go test it quickly. So we're going to add a performer. So if we go all the way to the bottom, you'll see the last record is 25. If we go add a performer, let's go over there just so we can make sure. Add a performer. Perform name is not a valid field. So there was a problem. So we're going to restore the database. Mr. Long, you made a mistake. What's the mistake? I hope you picked it up. So we reset the database to get rid of that record. What did we? Perform name is actually one word, Mr. Long. So yes, we must make sure that those are exactly like they are in the database. Test it again. Add performer. record added. So there we can see all the values have been added, and it's got the current year joined as well. So there we go. So there we go. Now we know it's working. If you want to get rid of it and test it again, restore the database to its original state. Okay, so there we go. That's that one done. Let's go to 2.4. Code has been provided to prompt the user for a category. Complete the code to 4 that increases all the performers per show payment by 50% in the inputted category. So just one of those 4 must be changed. So we're not doing all the records, just those ones. So calculate and display the total cost this 10% increase will be, and then we must calculate and display the total cost this 10% increase will be for the circuits using the show message. So all those 15% increases, we're going to have to work out how much extra are we going to be paying to our budget. So that's what it will be if we picked a dancer. So let's go do that quickly. So first of all, let's just do the changes first. So we're going to go through we're going through each and every record. We've got a category, and we are going to loop through each and every record. So that's why I'm going to copy and paste this. We're going to work smart, not hard. Paste that, and we are not going to need an ID, and we're not going to need this. Okay, so there we go. What do we get? We got a first, well, not in file, if TBL performers, and we're looking at the category. If that category is the same as the inputted category, if that's correct, then and only then, and we're going to do a few things, so that's why I'm going to put a begin end. If that's the case, then we must increase the per show payment by 15%. What we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, well, we need to go into edit mode for this particular record, because you can only edit one record at a time. That's why I'm not going to put this edit outside, because we're going through each and every record and editing each one. I'm going to go to it and say TBL performers, and it's per show payment field must change. Let's make sure we spelled it correctly. We did it earlier there. It must be the same as that. I think that's the same. Yeah, that looks the same. If that value must be increased by 15%. Now, there are lots of ways of doing an increase of 15%. You can go equals, or we can actually work it out first. If we can do, yeah, so the increase. I'm going to make a variable called R increase. The reason why I make it a real is because we're dealing with percentages here. So we're going to take R increase, and it's going to equal to whatever the TBL performers per show payment times it by 15%, which is 15 divided by 100, or you could have gone times it by 0.15. That would be 15%. So that's how much we want to increase it by. Take the show and times it by 0.15, and that's how much we want to increase it. So the per show payment will be whatever's in the per show payment plus this R or R increase, because it's a real number. So take that increase and add it on, and then we're going to go TBL performers dot post for the results. Okay, so let's just run that for now, and then we go to the next record. So let's just do that and see if it changes the correct ones. So if I go give a category bonus, so look at the dancer. So we can see that it's 1300. If I go down a bit more to the next dancer, that's 1350. So give category bonus to the dancers, go okay. So if I go up a bit, we can see that this dancer is now going up a bit, and then the next dancer has also gone up a bit. So they have changed. So we're going to restore the database because we want to go back to its original state. But we only wanted to, we want to work out how, all those 15% increases, how much does it add up to? So I'm going to make an R total for the R total increase, and we're going to initialize R total to a 0. And every time there's an increase, we want to work out not what the total amount is for all the dancers, but just what that increase is going to be. So R total is equal to R total plus this R increase. Now, it's lucky that I've done it this way. I've worked out the increase before we changed anything so that I could just take this value and add it on. If you didn't do it this way, if you did this calculation part over here, so instead of adding increase, you just added that calculation, then you wouldn't be able to work out what that little jump is individually for each person. So you would have to first go and add that increase and increase it by 15. You can't change it and then work out the increase, because then you've changed the value. You want to work out how much is increased by. So we've gone basically, we've first worked out how much it must increase by, add it to total, and then add that increase to the total. So that at the end of all the looping, we can then say show message, and we can then display this message of total increase to budget is that amount. Which is all the 15% increases added together. Total increase added to budget added to is going to be whatever that value is, which is my R total, which we're going to convert from a real to a string value. So we're going to make it like a currency as well. And again, you can type it out individually, but you've done it so many times, Mr. Long, I know. So why don't we just come over here and just copy what we've done so many times before. Come over here, copy that, just copy that, boom. Just copy that last bit, that's the part that's probably takes the longest step. You can do that if you want to save time. I don't know if it's quicker just to type it, but we're going to say float to string F, and then at the end I'm going to just go Control V and paste those values. Say currency 8,2, so you can do that as well. So total increase to budget is that much. Let's see if it works. We want dancers, and we get that amount, which is that the correct amount? Yes, that's the correct amount that we've got for our total as well. So there we go. Let's restore the database so we go back to its original state. That's why they give us that restore database button. So to recap, we went through each and every record. If we found a matching category, put it into edit mode, and we added 15%. But before we did that, we worked out what that 15% increase is, and we added it to some sort of total. So we can work out how much all these totals are going to add up to. So how much everyone's total increase of 15%, how much is that going to add to our budget? Okay, so there we go. Let's go to the last question. Complete the code for Q25, which will calculate and display a list of performers that have served the longest based on the year joined in the circus. It is possible that multiple performers have served the longest, and all possible longest serving performers must be displayed. So this means there's not just one person, it's a lot of them. The performer's name and surname and the act that they are in must be displayed. The number of years that they have served based on the current year that they've joined in the heading must be shown. So I'm doing this in 2023, so this is 8 years of service. So if you do this in 2024, it's going to be 9 years of service. Just take note that your results will be different. So we want to use the current here to display how many years of service they've done. Okay, so how do we work out the people that have worked there the longest? Now, the year that they've joined, what are we looking for? The year they joined. If they've worked there the longest, or someone who's joined in 2019, have they been there longer than someone that's been there in 2016? No. So the smaller the year joined, the longer they've been there. So we actually looking, or not we looking for the most number of years there, but we're looking for the smallest year joined. Find what that number is. So we're trying to find the minimum number here. That's a min problem first. Now come here to longest serving, and we first need to find the year joined, which is the smallest. I want to make an R min of type integer. And this is a simple min problem. So we're going to use our algorithm TBL performers. You could have copied and pasted dot first, while not TBL performers dot end of file. Okay, so there's my algorithm. So we're going to initialize our min to the opposite of what is to a very, very big number. So we're dealing with years, so this one will make it really, really big. And we want to find the smallest. If the TBL performers, if the year joined value, it's spelled like that. Just go double check. Year joined, yes, that's how it's spelled. If the year joined value is less than my R min, which the first one will definitely be less. 2019 will definitely be less than that. So that'll become our new smallest. And then it'll keep doing this. And every time we find a small value, we reset R min to TBL performers the year joined. So this algorithm is going to go through each and every record and try to find which year is the smallest year in the year joined. Only once we've done all of that, only once we've gone through the entire table will we have that value. Then we can go through it a second time and find all those that match that year. So only once that's done, we're going to have to now loop again a second time after that and say if the year joined is the same value as the min value that we just found over here. So as I said, this code above finds the smallest year joined, which would be the person who joined the earliest, who's been there the longest. If we find someone that matches now, we tried to determine which is the smallest. Now that we found the smallest, we check in all those year joined the second time around that equal to the min. And if it is equal to min, then what do we want to do? We want to display the name, and they said also display the act name. So that person's name of the, and then the act name. So then we're going to say the rich edit. We're going to say the TBL performer's name. I think it's perform name was the full name. Remember, we spelled it wrong earlier. And then we're going to add the text. What text we can say? Of the, and then we're going to put their act name. So I'm going to put the text of the, and then we're going to put the TBL performers act name. Now both of those are strings, so there's no need to convert anything. So go fetch the perform name, go fetch the act name, put it like that. So let's put it like that. So there we go. So let's test it quickly. So longest serving, and we found those three, Mia, and Liam. Mia, Mia, and Liam. That's correct, and we got the 3 correct teams correct. The only thing that's missing is we don't say thank you for your 8 years of service, so we need to add that. So we're going to do that quickly. That's the part that's missing. So before we display the names, we're going to say rich edit summary .lines.add thank you for your 8 years of service. Now, they don't want me just to say 8 years of service every single time. We need to make sure that 8 years of service is based on a calculation of the current year. So if I look over here at the data, if I look over here, there's Mia. She started in 2015. So therefore, 2015 minus 2023 would be 8. That's where they get the 8 from. But we can't assume that this is going to run every single year in 2023. So we actually need to work out where we get that 8 from. So the actual year, so I'm going to make a variable called years. So I'm going to say, how do we work that out? Well, our years is equal to 2023 minus whatever our min is. But that's assuming that we're going to run that this year. But we could run this any year. What happens if we do this next year, which is when you're probably going to be doing it in 2024? So how do we get the current year? So long as we do that earlier in this question over here, when we added a performer, we got the current year. So there we go. That's how we get the current year. So again, I'm going to just copy that and come over here and say, go get the current year as a number, which will be 2023 this year, but next year will be 2024, and minus 2015, and that'll give you 9 years. So instead of that 8, we're going to now put in our years as an integer in between there. But that's an integer, and we want this to be a whole string, so we can convert this from a string to an int. No, Mr. Long, it's a string, or it's an int already, int to string. So convert that our years from an int to a string and add. So thank you for 8 years of service. If we run this next year, it'll say 9 years of service, which is what you'll probably have if you're doing this in 2024. So let's go and try it. Longest serving members, it says 8 years, but if you do this next year, it'll say 9 years and it'll give you the same results. So there we go. So the key to this one is you can't work out the smallest year unless you've gone through all the records first, and then you've got to go through a second time and finding those that match that value. So that's something you could have done, the working out the R min minus the year and make that a biggest number. You could have done that as well, but this is just one way of doing it. So there we go. I think that's all the questions done. That's the end of the database question. We're now going to move on to question 3, which is the text file question. Don't forget to support the channel by clicking on that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and share us with your friends. We would love for you to support us, as well as our computer terms channel. Go to @Mr. Long Computer Terms. And remember, don't do it the long way, do it the Mr. Long way.